Shall we begin? Let's begin now.
So as many of you know or understand, gender is in fact the seventh principle of the Hermetic principles that can be found and understood by reading and consulting the Emerald Tablets or the Kabbalion. And that these principles are expressions of how the universe operates, and that the universe chooses to operate in a binary, switchy kind of way, so that the aspect that seems to have the greater juice, the more power, becomes masculinely aspected within the local context. I'll explain this more, but keep in mind that in order to have an adequate discussion about sex, one needs to realize that this is a topic that is addressed within the Emerald Tablets, within the Kabbalion, as a principle of physical manifestation. And so this is something that we've been discussing with relationship to the electric universe. And I've only been giving us like half of the picture, and it drives me crazy because there's so much more to all of this. So I want you guys to realize, first and foremost, as a component of this lesson, that when I teach stuff to you here, I'm trying to package it into these little tiny bites, but it's not the full picture always. And some of you may have a sense of that, and are like, oh, but it seems like there should be some other way, or maybe there's a dualistic presentation here. Well, this is exactly one of those cases, all right? As I've been presenting to you over time and explaining, like, for instance, how atoms and planets are structured, I point out, and remember, our definition of what north and south is entirely subjective, right? The joke is, that the stuff coming out of a northbound buffalo is probably not fit for consumption, but definitely for burning, right? Because he's going north, which means his butt's facing south, and if he happens to leave something behind, you can save that for later and burn it, right? But not eat it. It's a different kind of pie. Well, that's a presentation that's built on just our relative aspect presentation of assuming that this is up, right, and that is down, and so north then is up on a map and south is down, and it's completely arbitrary, but we use these definitions because they work, okay? So for us as a person in presentation, we aspect out as a physical presentation of feminine receptive at the top, so stuff comes in, and all of our biology is geared for that, right? Intake, 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 and according to certain cultures, intake, that our thoughts exist remote by remote, and that this is the receiver, that the brain is the receiver of the mind, and that the mind is electromagnetically non-specific. It doesn't have a particular locality other than planet Earth, let's say. So this is feminine receptive, this then is masculine projective, and your body exhibits these principles by order of its function, right? We consume, and then it eventually digests and excretes, and everything comes out this way, including babies. So everything projects out the south side and is drawn in on the north side. And this then becomes a functional basis for understanding the structure of the universe, the form of the universe. And it's as valuable to understand it in this way as to understand that when examining the two pillars and the hands, as I talked about in the first class, that the right hand is white because it is defined so by resting on the left shoulder or the left pillar when it rests. Similarly, the left hand is black because it's on the right pillar. and that those two pillars then represent Kabbalistically a dualistic opposition, and this could be then red, and this could be blue, okay, because these are the eyes of Horus and their respective locations, descending straight down when at rest. So this then is one aspect, and this is another. We talked about that. In the same way, when looking at this is a static presentation. However, when looking at it as it flows, as a form of function, and this will kind of blow you away, but some of you might have noticed as we look through the first slides that the negative actually appears to project and the positive appears to receive. What this actually is, that idea of projection and reception, is actually pull and push. And we'll get to sex here shortly, but in order for you to really appreciate sex, you got to appreciate what it's built on, because you can't use that energy if you don't understand it. I mean, one of the things, this is a little sidebar here, but just one of the things that I really appreciate about animes like Full Metal Alchemist is that in order for them to do what they do, they really have to understand what this stuff is built on. And then once they understand that, they have a grasp, they can formulate that, boom, they can do everything. Similarly, everything that we're going to talk about here, everything is built upon. Literally, everything is about sex until you get to sex, and then sex is about power. And this is about the power side of it, okay? But before we get to that, everything switches out, and you find in structure and form that things become masculine and feminine, projective and receptive, pull and push. And this is where our own life experience can characterize the emotional complexity that exists within the universe on every level, all right? Specifically, the reason the negative then has this push aspect is when it becomes into the structure of an atom, and we have a proton in the inside, let's say, and a bunch of electrons, and of course we have neutrons, right? They balance this stuff out, but for now, we'll just say we got, these protons in the middle, and they're all doing their thing, right? Being protons, gathering together, because like likes likes, so they're pulling everything together. On the outside, there's the shell of electrons, and the electrons interact with the rest of the environment, and their first interaction before becoming volatile and exchanging themselves with other systems, their number one thing that they do is push on everything else. And that is in fact the electromagnetic force. It's the reason why I'm not just some soup of electromagnetic plasma right now, and that my cells remain my cells, and every single structure of me remains me in opposition to every structure that's around me, so my clothes don't goop into me and I don't sink through the floor, and I'm able to open doors and close things and interact, right? But all of that is a result of the structure of the outer electron shell of everything else in opposition to everything else. Pushing, right? Pushing. Now what's really interesting is that emotionally we do the same thing. So if I'm in a really shit mood, right, I'm really negative, then I push people away. And we actually describe it like that. Why are you so negative? Why are you pushing everyone away? Because we are a fractal embodiment of the consciousness of the universe. So the same principles that apply here on a subatomic level also apply on a galactic and planetary level, right? So solar systems interact like that at first too. And thank God it means that things are less likely to collide and more likely to push each other out of the way until they find their new electrical static point, their homeostatic point, where then they're in some kind of orbit. We can talk about all that later, but right now, realize that the first line, the first thing, the first presentation of the universe as a function of what it is that the negative charge repels, keeps things apart, pushes, and the positive stuff pulls in. So this function then is the star at the center of a solar system, let's say, becomes the gate through which all these Birkeland currents are channeled and become a confluence, and then boom, that projects outward, right? As a form, as a result of the structure of the force that is running through it. It's literally a chicken and the egg kind of thing, because you have to ask yourself, is it the force moving that is giving structure, or is there some structure pre-existent that the force is relying upon in order for it to flow? It could be both. It's probably everything, because that's the way it works. You know, it's all simultaneous, and I have no idea why. Only that it's amazing, and when you finally see it on every possible level, it's really remarkable. On a human level, then, when you become more positive, when you lift your energy up, amp it up, get things going, become more energetic, you find that people then are drawn to you. Things are drawn to you. This is the foundation, in fact, of all these secret books and all the secret videos, you know, this is the way the universe works. This is the science behind it. It's just really practical science. To understand that the universe has a dualistic presentation, and its form and function. So when it's in its form, and it looks like me or you or animals or plants and stuff, then you have this exterior that presents one way, but is driven coaxially the other way. It seems like it's an opposition, but actually it's its own thing. And just keep that in mind, so when you realize that projection is different from to project is different from to repel, then you see that these two still complement each other. Where in form it's projection, but in function it repels, it pushes. So it pulls and pushes. And everything about the universe functions in this way, where it pulls and it pushes, where it projects and it receives. So this then becomes the foundation for why everything, as Oscar Wilde observed, is about sex. Until you get to sex, and then it's actually about power. And it's always about power. It's just the presentation of it. Gender and gender expression is reliant upon the context of its environment. We have certain organisms which actually exhibit that. Usually they're amphibians, like frogs. The African frog comes to mind, where when the environment is socially stressed, fewer males are produced and more females are produced. Interestingly enough, human beings exhibit the exact same thing when the male within the species becomes the litmus test for social stress. So as men become more stressed, we're less likely to produce masculine sperm, male sperm. We'll produce a lot more female sperm, though, and that then results in a shift in population structure generationally. So we function just like everything else in the universe. It requires understanding of what those stresses are. So universally then, if you're looking at this from a planetary level, okay, and just remember that everything is fractally mirroring everything else. So by understanding one of these principles, you then can understand all of these principles. It's the reason why the principle of correspondence is so valuable. The as above, so below, and as below, so above. Because by recognizing that all systems are built upon all systems, you can't just have, this is why, a little sidebar here, this is why quantum mechanics as a structure of the universe, meaning that things can pop in and out, the quantum uncertainty. And in fact, in the most recent Guardians of the Galaxy movie, they have a whole asteroid field of quantum uncertainty where things are popping in and out, and it's resulting in all this chaos. And of course, imagine what would that happen if that happened inside of living organisms, and if it was an actual operational principle of the universe, that you couldn't rely on things to be there at any given moment. Well, that's the bag of goods that we've been sold by theoretical mathematicians and quantum physicists, theoretical quantum physicists. The principle that I choose to ascribe to is one which is observable, that you can quantify with empirical observations and evidence, and that is testable. Like, I can go out and just see it and then do it and test it. If I had lab material, I could test it there too. So, and that's the electric universe paradigm. The electric universe paradigm brings connection to everything, because you understand that you're flowing with everything. All right? So, how's everything flow? Well, as I've mentioned in other classes, depending upon the outward structure, the outward presentation of the celestial body, okay? If it is highly energetic and is a Z-pinch in arc mode, which is then a star, this body then it projects that energy out into the system at large in an effort to redistribute the energy that it is receiving as it's pulling in energy cosmically, right? And then it pushes that out. As a component of that, it slaves out other celestial spheres, either by procreating those spheres, by budding them off the side of itself, and then ejecting them in an effort to then stabilize that electromagnetic structure, or it captures them in an exchange with other electromagnetic spheres, which might not be as energetic. That's the story of our cosmic history, is that a more energetic body came into play, captured other bodies, and here we are. And as a result, the redistribution of all that electromagnetism resulted in the cosmic play of mythology that we have as the bedrock of all the things that we like to talk about esoterically, okay? Because you can't talk about the esoteric unless you're talking about all of these mythologies, because eventually someone's going to make a pentagram or some kind of geometric form, and they're going to scrawl a symbol for Mars and maybe a symbol for Venus, and they'll have some expectation of a result as the result of putting those two sigils there. What I always asked myself is, what am I calling upon when I put those two sigils there? I had enough intelligence to realize there's not a guy and a girl out there that I'm summoning. So what is it that I'm doing? And that's what brought me to an understanding of the larger cosmic play. That's what made all of this relevant, because then by understanding the gender expression of certain divinities over time, I could understand what was being created or expressed as a result of those mythologies and how they impacted us collectively as consciousness, as we grew, evolved, and developed under their light. Okay? So as these objects interact, then the outward expression is what dictates their function. So if this is a larger body and this is a smaller body, this one would seek to discharge into this one, making this one aspect feminine receptive and this one aspect positive projective. Interestingly enough, at the same time, this one is pulling while this one is pushing. So it's projecting, this is receiving, this is pulling in, and this is pushing away. And that's the seesaw event of the universe. It is to project and receive, to pull in, and to push away.